talking about instructional support. It's a class domain within the entire class framework. Instructional support focuses on the ways that teachers implement curriculum to effectively support cognitive and language development. Within the domain of instructional support, there are 3 dimensions. These are quality of feedback, language modeling, and concept development. Concept development measures the use of instructional discussions and activities to promote children's higher order thinking skills and cognition, and it focuses on understanding rather than on rote instruction. So concept development is when we're talking about higher order thinking questions, making connections to the real world, and these 4 indicators are what we're really looking for within concept development. So analysis and reasoning, integration, creating, and connections to the real world. To give you a brief overview of what these things are, analysis and reasoning is when teachers frequently use discussions and activities to encourage analysis and reasoning. This might look like how or why questions, problem solving, making predictions or doing experiments in the classroom, classification and comparison of different things or objects, and evaluation. The description of creating is giving when teachers provide opportunities for children to be creative and generate their own ideas and products. So this might look like brainstorming, planning, or producing something. Integration is when teachers consistently link concepts and activities to one another into previous learning. So this is connecting concepts and integrating things with previous knowledge. This might be talking about a color from the art unit when you're in the health unit, something like that. And connections to the real world are when teachers are consistently relating concepts to the children's actual lives. So this might be if you're talking again about the color unit, perhaps you might ask students to discuss what they're wearing. The dimension quality of feedback assesses the degree to which a teacher provides feedback that expands learning and understanding and encourages continued participation. Within the dimension of quality of feedback, there are 5 behavior indicators observed. These are scaffolding, feedback loops, prompting thought processes, providing information, encouragement, and affirmation. A breakdown of these. Scaffolding is when teachers scaffold for children who are having a hard time understanding a concept. This might look like giving a hint or assistance, maybe giving the first sound of the word that the student is searching for, or giving some kind of connection, a clue. Feedback loops are frequent feedback loops, back and forth exchanges between teachers and children. So this is really a conversation, but it includes persistence by the teacher and follow-up questions. Prompting thought processes is when teachers query children or prompt children to explain their thinking and rationale for responses and actions. Teachers might ask children to explain their thinking, or they might have questions in response to what children said. They might also encourage children to think about why they did something. So this might be something that you might use in an emotional context. Maybe a child just took something from another student. You might say, why did you do that? Or what did you think about before you did that? To help them have some thoughts about why they did something. The indicator of providing information is when teachers provide additional information to expand on children's understanding and actions. So this might be expansion, clarification, or specific feedback. And finally, encouragement and affirmation is when teachers offer encouragement of children's efforts that increases children's involvement and persistence. So this isn't just praise, but this is really that specific praise that we've been talking about for a while. This is also recognizing for students when they've done something really great or reinforcing when they're working really hard. So this is encouragement for students' persistence and for their effort. Finally, this dimension of language modeling captures the quality and amount that teachers use of language stimulation and language facilitation techniques. Within the dimension of language modeling, there are 5 behavior indicators observed: frequent conversation, open-ended questions, repetition and extension, self and parallel talk, and advanced language. These 5 indicators really drive high-quality conversation in the classroom. So first, frequent conversation. This is just back and forth exchanges but they also include responding. So it's not just a teacher firing questions to a student, but it's really asking questions that develop into a true conversation. It also is conversations between peers. So a teacher could be talking all day, but if the students aren't talking to each other, then that is not frequent conversation in the classroom. Open-ended questions are when teachers ask many open-ended questions. These are questions that require more than a one-word response, and they might have a couple different answers. Repetition and extension is when teachers repeat or extend a child's response. So for example, if a child answers with a one-word response, maybe they say the sky, what color is the sky? And the child says blue. The teacher might say, that's right, the sky is blue, to give a repetition, and they might extend or elaborate on their response. Self and parallel talk, we've talked about this before, is when the teacher consistently maps his or her own actions and children's actions through language and description. So this is really mapping students' actions with language and also children's actions with language. So think about your sportscaster talk when you're mapping children's actions with language, and think about your cooking show speak when you're mapping your actions with your language. Finally, advanced language is teachers using advanced language with children. So using a variety of words, thinking about new words that you can introduce, and connecting familiar words and/or ideas to new words. So here's some tips and tricks for concept development. Concept development is all about supporting students to think more deeply. ECR lessons script out several question prompts, including how and why questions, as well as questions that encourage students to brainstorm and generate ideas. Make sure to highlight how the thematic units and lessons connect to each other, as well as the connections to students' lives. Make sure that you plan with your team and identify the ways that you can support students to continue to share their thoughts. Role play and practice how to keep feedback loops going. Provide students with additional information, hints, and guidance to help them reach answers on their own, and praise students' efforts to keep them engaged in learning. For language modeling, familiarize yourself with a variety of questioning strategies and stems that you can use to respond to students, even when they are off base. You can use the ECR question taxonomy, which we will share, to help you brainstorm and plan a variety of questions. Repetition and extension, self-talk, and parallel talk are great strategies to build vocabulary. Finally, leverage the vocabulary embedded in the ECR lessons and centers facilitation to further reinforce a variety of advanced language. Now, we're going to get a chance to practice. You will be required to submit via email responses to this deliberate practice lesson section. So in the email that you received, you will see directions that were written out that encourage you to identify elements where you already see classroom instructional support, and you can look for what is missing and brainstorm how you might include it in the lesson. So that is it for today. I want you to do your very best. I want you to be thoughtful and mindful in the responses that you send, and I look forward to seeing you next week.